As the founder, CEO, and editor-in-chief of Media Ops, the company behind DevOps.com, Container Journal, as well as the co-founder of the very prestigious DevOps Institute, our next keynote speaker is attuned to the world of technology, particularly cloud, DevOps, security, and open source. He's one of the most popular personalities in the security and technology community. Being a digital anarchist, he has assisted in building many technology companies by combining a strong business background with a deep knowledge of technology. In a few minutes from now, he'll bring to you his insights on DevSecOps, the new normal. Please put your hearts out as I now invite on the E stage the one and only Mr. Alan Shimel.
Hi, everyone. This is Alan Shimel of DevOps.com. Welcome to the DevOps India Summit, and thanks for attending my session here today. I'll be talking about DevSecOps, the new normal. Everything has changed, and we're going to have a good discussion. But for those of you who may not be familiar with me, my name is, as I said, Alan Shimel. I'm the editor-in-chief for DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, Container Journal, and these are all part of Media Ops, the company I founded about 7 years ago, and which I'm CEO of. I'm also the co-founder of the DevOps Institute, the Accelerated Strategies Group, Analyst Group, and our digital platform, Digital Anarchist. I host TechStrong TV 3 days a week, and within the DevOps and DevSecOps space, I get around. But if you haven't checked out any of the brands that fall under our Media Ops brands, please do. And thanks for joining us today. So DevSecOps, the new normal. Like most of you, the COVID-19 situation, calamity, has had a profound impact on our personal lives, on our professional careers, and on humanity as a whole. Never, in some ways, never before has all of humanity faced this one common enemy, one common threat. And no matter whether you're watching this in Bangalore, India, or Rome, or London, or New York, or San Francisco, or Sydney, Australia, or anywhere else in the world, all of us are concerned for our safety. All of us are concerned about what's happening with this terrible virus and disease. But it's had profound impact on our ability to work, on our ability to exist even. But here's the good news, if there is any good news in all this, is that for those organizations who had adopted a DevOps sort of framework or mindset, for those organizations that were already moving towards digital transformation, cloud transformation, for those organizations that had already adopted a DevSecOps posture or path, it's been a little bit easier to move to this all remote new way of doing things. In fact, some companies that we work with have thrived while going all remote, continuing to accelerate their pace of transformation, to deploy safely with better quality, faster. And I think it's within reach of every organization to do that if they adopt sound DevOps principles, including DevSecOps. But I also think that what we do in DevSecOps, how we do it, what the mission is, has fundamentally changed. As the slide says, everything is different now. But not only is it different now, I've been in technology 30 plus years. I've never seen technology go backwards, and I don't think it's going to go backwards this time. Whenever this new normal is or emerges, whenever it emerges and whatever it is, I know that it's going to be here to stay and we will go forward from there. We're not going to go back to the way things were in January or early February of 2020. We will go forward always. It's almost like as if time only goes in one direction, so does technology. So everything is different now, and we will not be going back. What does it mean for our future? Well, I don't know how many of you are watching this from your home. How many of you have been watching this from home even before COVID? I would imagine there's many more of you working from home now. In fact, here in the U.S., pretty much everyone was working from home for the last 4 or 5 months, and then most still are. But here's an interesting thing, and we learned it even here at Media Ops. It's okay. We can work from home, especially if you're in the knowledge industry, technology industry. We can work from home and still be effective. So one has to ask themselves, why go back to the office? What do we gain from being in the office? And yes, there is the so-called water cooler conferences. There is that face-to-face, human-to-human interaction, which I believe in and I still think is important. But in the greater scheme of things, it's an 80-20 rule. We still can be very, very effective working remotely. And I think the future is that people may come back. Some of us will go back to our offices full time. Others, though, and I think the majority, may go back to their office occasionally. 1, 2, perhaps 3 days a week. But the shift to remote work and working from home is not going away and will not go back. Just a point of fact, Gartner recent survey, 74% of CFOs will shift some employees to remote work permanently after the pandemic. Now, so that's almost 3/4 of all CFOs. And when they say shift some employees, I've seen that number fluctuate between 30 and 70%, depending on size of organization, how remote they were before this, and their particular job function. But this is going to fundamentally change so much of what we do in DevSecOps, in security, as well as technology, as well as society. Think about it. I wouldn't want to be selling commercial real estate leases right now. It's got to be a tough sell. Let's briefly take a look at what the traditional approach to security was prior to COVID, right? And if you're like, I don't know if you're like me, but as I mentioned, I've been in technology 30 plus years. I've been in security over 20, 25. And, it was always, number one, we were securing the device, that endpoint. We had antivirus, and then we, of course, had anti-malware, anti-phishing, FTE, security policies around passwords and versions and patch controls and upgrading, and MFA, which was a huge part of it. After securing that endpoint, right, it was a defense in depth, as we call it, layers. We had securing the network. And for many of us, that translated now into Wi-Fi access security, guest networks, VPNs, intrusion detection and prevention, firewalls, etc. And then the third part of it was securing applications. So we had things like single sign-on and MFA and conditional access and IP trust, and more importantly, AppSec. Right? I think the fundamental thing, or the biggest part of DevSecOps, was around AppSec, securing our applications. But DevSecOps brought a twist to the AppSec equation. For so long, or originally, AppSec, right, you had your web application firewalls, which was sort of post-deployment AppSec, if you will. And whether you are a fan of WAF or not, they're there, and they have been. But so much of AppSec started to evolve into penetration testing as a service, web application testing as a service, pre-deployment. And we kept, as we say, shifting left this AppSec, shifting AppSec left, right? Checking our code earlier and earlier to the point of let's check that code as soon as we log it into our Git or whatever repository we're using, right? And so this whole idea of shift left with security, DevSecOps, GitOps, building security into it, really caught on before COVID. I will tell you, and this is something that we follow very closely at DevOps.com and Container Journal and Security Boulevard, that model of AppSec, of shifting it left, was really I don't want to say becoming dominant, but it was becoming the norm. That was a best practices. Now, as a result of what we've seen in COVID and with teams working remotely, we've seen that best practice accelerated. It is now really the dominant way of developing, because the key part there was that this AppSec testing started to be automated, built into our software delivery pipeline and process, and developers and just testers, not just necessarily the security team, was able to initiate these scans and this test. And COVID or no COVID, fundamentally, that's what made DevSecOps as popular as it is, that it's the theme of this year's event, and it was the theme even before COVID. Now, our IT infrastructure world has changed. First of all, we've seen just, perhaps 6 years worth of cloud transformation migration over the last 6 months, right? So what that means is our on-premises infrastructure, not just security, but IT infrastructure, has become obsolete in a matter of months, right? If you're not moving it to the cloud right now, you're probably really suffering. And in moving it to the cloud, that changes some of our fundamental security assumptions, right? So for so many of us, security in the LAN, security at the office was based upon a Microsoft Active Directory infrastructure with domains, right? Domain control and stuff like that. We logged on predominantly through Windows. And it was easy, not easy, but we knew what the mission was, controlling our infrastructure on premises. We were able to build that perimeter around our infrastructure. We were able to build that perimeter around our users who were in the office. We were able to build that perimeter around our applications that were in the data center or the server closet in the office. And that's changed now, right? That in early March, in the blink of an eye, that all went away. We moved to a cloud, or we accelerated our movement to a cloud infrastructure. The other thing, and again, this was a trend that was really well on its way before COVID, but COVID has cemented its place as the preeminent, dominant way of doing things, is that there's really no applications. There's not even a lot of data, unless you're in some sort of government or other highly regulated environment where data has to stay local. The data is not even local. The app's not local. The data is not local. The users aren't local. So why should anything else be local, including security? So nothing's on-prem. I've heard some companies refer to this as SaaSOps, right? We live in the age where probably for all of you out here, I'm going to guess 80 to 90% of the applications you're using are SaaS-based applications, whether it be Office or Microsoft 365 for, common spreadsheets and Word documents, or the Google, analogs of them, or other kinds of applications, Salesforce, AWS, or whatever you're using, Adobe. They're all SaaS-based. And it's not just commercial off-the-shelf applications. Even the internal applications that we're developing at our enterprises are all now being hosted in the cloud for the most part. Now, an exception to this is mainframe. If you're working in a large financial institution, a large healthcare, perhaps a large government agency, you may still have your big iron, your IBM Z machine, and those, of course, aren't in the cloud. They're at the data center. But even there, we've seen such a transition of the integration between a cloud front end and that mainframe back end that you don't even know when you're on one versus the other as a user, right? And the security built